All right. Hey, folks. Ryan here with the CactusCon crew once again, and with the Veox, and we have Bear of Berlin. Hello, fellas. Thank you for joining. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
Classic overlapping with multiple speakers. Gotta love it. All right. We're about to get into a Q&A for their session. But first, let's throw a giveaway your way. We have the Amazon $50 Amazon gift card sponsored by Digital Shadows. So we're going to go ahead and just give that sucker away right now. Let's do it. And survey says, boom. All right. Null Crisis is the way I'm going to go ahead and pronounce that. Congratulations, and thank you again very much to the Digital Shadows crew, Dustin et al. Unless you didn't want me to say your name, in which case, too late. So thanks very much. That's awesome. I don't know about the rest of folks, but I like money. So good stuff. We have a whole bunch of discussion going on in the channel, and there's a lot of really good things to dig into. Also, as we were discussing off air, there are a number of lead-ins essentially from the previous talk. So it's just kind of like, hey, malware analysis and triage stuff. And then, oh, hey, look at this. So I think that worked out really well. If our team did it by design, awesome. If not, well, let's pretend we did. So before we go any further and do the actual questions, anything that either of you fellows want to throw out there, bring up now.
Sure. Thank you. Just thank you, everyone. Thanks for everyone. There's been a lot of good conversation in the chat, so that's great to see. Jonas.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, I'm just really happy that there's a discussion going on. There's some great stuff going on right now around, when do indicators, when do we share them? I think for the Veox and I, we kind of looked at this from a perspective of, okay, if you get an incident at your company or something and it's relatively, new, that's when you're really going to be looking from the OPSEC perspective of, let's not divulge that we're looking at this publicly to the attacker necessarily. Let's wait a while for that information to be published. So I thought that was just interesting to give our take on that. And I saw another comment about stage versus stageless that I just went to go into. So a staged payload would be something where the initial shellcode is just going to be reaching out and grabbing the rest of the payload code and then executing that on the system. So it's a much smaller shellcode that actually needs to be executed. It's going to fit into memory buffers a lot easier, right? A stageless is going to have kind of like your whole pack. It's going to bring all the tools with you, but again, it's going to take a lot more memory space. So, in certain cases, it's not going to fit into a vulnerability that you want to exploit. That's where the staged obviously comes into play.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you for addressing those bad boys. Let's see. Do we want to tap on public versus private sandboxing in general, or was that already kind of the general? Let me flip that around a little bit. So the whole conversation for folks who weren't following along in the talk discussion, I believe it primarily was about indicator management, essentially, is what kind of dovetailed into like, well, okay, when you age out an indicator, right? There really is no quote unquote right answer on that. I'm sure the three of us now, all malware folks, would have different responses that different, whatever. And there's some folks who, some of us know very well in the chat, who are like, do it this way. And we, it's just been a common thing. So let's look at it this way. Are there any private sandboxes that you believe would work better as a public sandbox? Any kind of just, a thought process of like, well, this is something we normally use privately, but if this were something that could be public / maybe crowdsource or what have you, would that potentially change things? Just trying to think of a question that you wouldn't normally think of.
I'll take that because it's something that I've thought about recently a lot, especially around phishing. I think it'd be really interesting if there was more crowdsourced responses to phishing sandboxing, right? Because there are multiple different actors that are going to be attacking different orgs. Some of it's cross-organizational. It'd be great to kind of get more of a community focus. I mean, there's some, there's another thing that I'd like to see is crowdsourcing fake login pages. I think URL Scan has a little bit of this that I've seen that I like where it'll over time it'll identify, you know, like a a Microsoft login page on a non-Microsoft domain, or it'll flag it as like, hey, potentially, you know, a fake login page. It'd be cool, you know, maybe, you know, using those kind of sources and getting that more crowdsourced, and instead of, you know, only for your org. Because I think a lot of people can benefit, a lot of organizations can benefit from that information.
Absolutely. And just to piggyback on that a little bit, and as someone points out in the chat here, checking hashes is one thing, but I think more of what I had in mind was like submitting the actual binaries themselves to a public sandbox, because you never know. That might be the first time that binary is submitted to that sandbox, and you never know threat actors, you know, what they might be monitoring. So that's where that OPSEC piece is important.
The very first EDR, enterprise detection and response, for folks who aren't familiar with the term general, that I ever used, and that we used at a particular location that I will not disclose, let alone the name of the EDR. Its default setting was any binary that it was analyzing was to upload it to VirusTotal. What?
There you go.
So, yeah, that was my next point, was the automated piece, right? I mean, I think that's the other portion of like, where is the uploading of evidence coming? If it's a manual thing, well, then you have the analyst's discretion, right? You can kind of tune it around the situation, have situational awareness. If you're automating, for instance, sending all of your artifacts, you run into issues. What if there's PII? What if there's any sort of company information in those artifacts that the attacker put in, right? There's reasons why you would want to kind of stopgap and not say, let's just upload everything regardless. You know, there's some discretion. I think that's definitely useful.
So, thought about this. This is something that's bothered me for a while now. I have not yet personally heard of it occurring even a single time, but I'm just waiting. Someone's private tip threat intelligence platform is breached, is stolen, is accessed, whatever. Imagine whether it's a local crits instance, or, you know, a lot of folks are moving over to MISP, government entities are still in crits. What if all of a sudden someone's like, hey, I grabbed it, you know, I have their MISP, and people are like, you have what now? you have what now? Right? How many of those indicators that you consider solely private are all of a sudden not private, and how do you handle that? I don't think we have time for that discussion, but
Cat's out of the bag. That's how I see it. Cat's out of the bag.
Yeah, just imagine that. They're like, oh no, our Threat Connect account is private. Not anymore. It's like, actually, it's public now. Yeah. Whoops. I really love you.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Be mindful of
I
where
don't
you
know if
put
there's any indicator that's ever going to stay private forever. Like, that's, you know, probably that idea is probably, we should get away from thinking of that. It should, you know, there's a time and place for private, but I think it should have kind of like, when it runs out, it should have some sort of a date where like, okay, let's divulge this, let's open this up to the community for sure. Or, and again, there are private intel sharing communities already with different, you know, there's TLP, there's all these protocols for sharing intel specifically, you know, and with regards to kind of these concerns around confidentiality and stuff like that.
Trust groups.
Yep.
I find the problem with trust groups is that the trust group itself grows to and then too many people are allowed to bring folks in, and then your trust group of, you know, 80 highly skilled, all like you're all on the same page. You know, when there's 500 people, all of a sudden, no one wants to share information. You know, there are a couple big names still not big enough to mention. You know, not supposed to mention the trust group name, that some folks are aware, like, oh yeah, that died. No one was going to use that anymore. So then you got that problem. Let's see here. Boop, 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 boop. Oh, I love the fact that you brought up the phishing indicators. Many times, phishing threats these days are based on credential harvesting versus actual binaries. And then the credential harvesting stuff oftentimes will just get lost. So like you mentioned, URL scan is great. Sites like VirusTotal, where you can just put the domain in, you know, you have to be very careful with all the OPSEC. You take a phishing URL and you put it into the search, not the URL, but the search in VirusTotal. And what is the default thing that it does if it's not currently in the database right now? It auto-analyzes it for you. It didn't used to do that. It used to say, oh, we don't have that one. But now it searches it. And you're like, that's cute. Thank you. So lot of potential hurdles in our way to deal with all these indicators. So I'll go ahead and bring it up. We only have 3 or 4 minutes for continued discussion, so keep that in mind. But the overall concept of indicator management or aging out indicators, any general thoughts on that you wanna make in such a limited amount of time?
I'll start off and just say it's a challenge, and I don't know if there's a right answer. I would argue that there isn't a right answer. How many times have you seen something from a year ago creep up again? Now, it might be slightly different. I mean, the hash might not be exactly the same, but maybe some of the infrastructure behind it is partly the same. Like it's a great discussion, and I would love to see maybe like a panel discussion on that or something. That would be a great topic to talk about.
We have a couple folks in the chat who are discussing the very concept who would make a great panel on that. In fact, one of the fellows brought up, I won't throw his name out, I'm not sure if he wants his name out there, but in the discussion at the very least, was talking about the fact that your threat intelligence platforms may not be built to support a gratuitous number of indicators. So if you are like me, I'm the old school style personally, I want to hoard them all, and I want them always, and I just want to know, like, I want the dates to be associated, but I want them. And he's like, okay, that's cute, right? You try to generate X number of a graph or whatever over, Ryan's 17 billion indicators. You're like, cool story. So that also has to, come into play. Like, well, okay, what do you not just maintain and keep, but also analyze over when you're trying to correlate? Can your systems even do that when it becomes to a certain scale? So that was a really good conversation in the chat. Thank you, fellas, very, very much for your presentation. I'm such a malware guy myself, so I was like, yeah, I loved it. Hopefully, folks who have never seen that type of analysis, and especially folks who just aren't familiar very much so with reverse engineering or malware analysis, seeing the previous and this talk together are like, okay, maybe that's something I want to start playing around with, So I think that can make a good impact, both of those, especially going one after the other. All right, anything?
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. And we'll be around for questions and stuff. So don't hesitate to reach out.
Cool. Keep the conversation going. Thanks so much, everyone.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, we're going to throw a new giveaway. This is going to be the last giveaway of the day as we move into the final talk hour of the day. And this is going to be another set of Ted Dimopoulos signed InfoSec Rockstar books. So we're going to give out 2 of these bad boys. So I'm going to go ahead and go into the room now. And we're going to make that guy right there. And there we go. So you should see that. There we go. Everyone head on over to the giveaway section and throw your thumbs up. We'll be giving 2 of those out at the final Q&A after the upcoming talk. And for now, we're going to sign off. So again, thank you, fellas, very much.
Woo!
Thank you. Cheers.
Thank you. See you, everyone.